MyPlate as a tool for selecting nutritious foods, and KNPA 1.1, classify foods by groups in MyPlate. So those are kindergarten standards that I chose to focus on for my kindergarten lesson. The objectives that I created under that were the students will recognize MyPlate as a resource to look at when making choices about healthy food to consume. The students will analyze the foods that they eat and decide how to classify them based on MyPlate, and the students will be able to create a meal based on the information that they learned in the MyPlate lesson that we are about to talk about. So I used a couple different sources. The materials that I need would be pens, pencils, sticky notes, computer, the YouTube video, MyPlate handouts, the blank MyPlate handouts, and the MyPlate PowerPoint that I created. So I'm going to start my activity by passing out sticky notes for the kids to take and write, and each kid will get 5 sticky notes to write down like 5 things that they can remember that they've eaten in the last week. So for example, I'll do some and we can classify them. So some of the sticky notes that I created were pizza, apple, salad, and cheese. So for the kids, I would have them create their sticky notes, write them down, and then when everybody was seemed to be done on the board, I would have a column for healthy and a column for unhealthy. So I was thinking that the kids could come up and classify their foods that they have written down from what they've eaten on the sticky notes into either healthy or unhealthy, because I think that's kind of where kids start understanding nutrients. So for example, pizza, where would that go? Unhealthy. So we kind of have a conversation about where it's going and why it's going the place that it is. So pizza, unhealthy. Apple. So apple is kind of healthier. So we would talk about why an apple is healthy, what we know about an apple, and then classify it as healthy. Salad, healthy or unhealthy. So we'd have a discussion again about salad, where to go, where it goes under each column, and put it there. And then cheese was my last one. So those were 4 foods that I've eaten in the last week. So I would do that as an example and then go ahead and have the kids do that and create their own and put them up on my board for unhealthy and healthy. So we talk about what it means to be healthy or unhealthy. So healthy is something that makes you feel good, makes your body work the way it's supposed to, makes you feel energized and excited, and sustains you throughout the day. Unhealthy would be things such as like ice cream and potato chips that are like fun to eat, they taste good, but they don't really add substance to your body. So we talk about how it's important to eat both. It's fun to eat the unhealthy stuff, and sometimes you deserve a treat, but it's important to recognize that healthy foods are what we should be putting into our body a majority of the time. So once we just discuss the 2 of those, we could talk about, or I could ask the students, how else can we classify foods that we're putting into our bodies? So I'd ask the students to raise their hands and tell me if they have other ways that they classify foods in their house. So they could raise their hands, tell me whatever they know, and then we would talk about, has anyone heard of MyPlate? So that would be the question that we would pose, and students could raise their hand and let us know what they know about MyPlate, but a lot of them at this age wouldn't know anything about it unless their parents have talked to them. So we would talk about it, and then I would show this introductory video about MyPlate. So this is the introductory video.
Sometimes it's hard to know what to eat to be healthy. MyPlate is a simple guide to help us out. Notice the 5 food groups: fruits, vegetables, proteins, grains, and dairy. Our plate at home should look similar to the MyPlate guide. Notice how half the plate is full of fruits and vegetables. A smaller portion contains protein, like lean meat or fish. There's also grains, like whole grain bread or pasta, and dairy, like milk, yogurt, or cheese. Follow the MyPlate guide.
So I would show the kids that as kind of a starter to explain what MyPlate is and to talk about the different things that MyPlate uses to classify the food groups. So I'd ask the students to raise their hands and to share the 5 different portions that they saw on MyPlate if they remember. So we haven't really talked about it yet, but kind of to get them starting to think and to remember. So the 5 categories would be grains, proteins, vegetables, fruit, and dairy. So those are the 5 major things on my plate that are described in the video and that are shown in the picture that they showed of the my plate and what your plate is supposed to look like. So once we do that, I would have this PowerPoint pulled up that I created that I called the Understanding Nutrition Using My Plate PowerPoint. So that is here. I have my PowerPoint. So this is here, Understanding Nutrition Using My Plate. So the first question that I would ask the students is, what is my plate? So my plate is a symbol or model of healthy eating in the United States. It is important for the students to understand what it is and how it works. So it is something that we've used all over the United States to classify different foods and to place the foods into the different groups. So the next thing on the my plate would be to show the picture of what is my plate. So fruits, vegetables, grains, protein, and dairy. So again, that's what this looks like. Next we'd look at the slides to talk about what each different category is. So fruits are produced by plants, trees, and they have seeds. So that's a really important thing to remember, that they do have seeds. They're very colorful and nutritious, and they're sweet and delicious. So that's kind of a way to remember it: colorful, nutritious, sweet, and delicious. It kind of rhymes, so I kind of did that on purpose so that it would kind of stick in kids' brains. But the major thing that they really do need to know is that they are produced by plants and trees to create fruits. And they have seeds. So that's what makes them different from vegetables. So they do have seeds. So I would ask the kids then, can you explain some examples of fruits? So some examples of fruits would be strawberries, bananas, grapes, apples. Those are what I came up with. But the kids obviously could share some more. So that was on this slide right here. And then vegetables. So what are vegetables? I'd ask the kids to share what they know about vegetables and then go on to show the slide that's called vegetables and describe that a vegetable is a plant or a part of a plant that can be eaten and is nutritious for the body. So examples of plants, they have roots, leaves, stems, and one thing about vegetables is they do not have seeds. So that's what differs them from fruits versus vegetables. So fruits have seeds, vegetables do not. It's often kind of confusing because some things that we would classify typically as a vegetable, or many people know as a vegetable, is actually a fruit due to the fact that it has seeds. So an example of that would be a tomato. So many classify tomatoes as fruits, as vegetables, but actually they're fruits because they have seeds in the middle. So that's something to keep in mind. So they do not have seeds, and they're also colorful and nutritious. So they're very green, lively, like bright colors, and that's how you know they're good. So some examples that I came up with for that would be spinach, lettuce, and broccoli. So those are some good examples of vegetables that students would be able to understand and that they would kind of be familiar with at this point, and then they could obviously share some more. So here is the vegetable slide. And then fruits and veggies. So it's kind of, like I said, hard to distinguish, especially at kindergarten age, the difference between fruits and vegetables. It's kind of, they're all similar, they look similar, they all kind of taste similar, so it's kind of really hard to distinguish between the difference. So again, the difference is the seeds, so I would kind of reiterate that. That's a really big point. And then show this slide that distinguishes fruits versus vegetables. So it has both on there, and it shows different examples. So fruits would be apples, cherries, watermelon, stuff like that. Vegetables, pumpkins that we carve at Halloween, that would be a vegetable. Broccoli, lettuce, stuff like that basically is vegetables. The next category that we would do talk about is grains. So grains are small, hard seeds that, such as rice or wheat, that come from cereal plants. So they're used in a lot of things that we don't even think about. So when we're baking or cooking, we use flour. So you could ask students how many of them have baked and used flour before. It's kind of a common thing in households, so they should know about that. And they should recognize that that is a grain. So examples of that would be rice, bread, pasta, a lot of the things that I eat on a typical basis, and ask the kids if that's relating to what they eat on a typical basis as well. So the next slide would be proteins. So proteins are kind of hard to explain to children, but I think it's important to explain that they're food packed with nutrients to give you energy for the day. So a nutrient is something that your body needs. It's kind of like a vitamin that makes your body work the way that it's supposed to. So I think it's important to explain that to students. And they can come from plants or animals. So it's not just a plant like a fruit or vegetable, but it can come from plants or animals. Some examples of this would be meats such as chicken, steak, fish, anything like that, eggs, and then something that many often forget are beans. So we could do beans, is another example of protein. And then dairy. So dairy is something that contains or comes from milk. So where does milk come from? That's something important to ask. Milk comes from animals. So unlike the grains that could come from, or the proteins that could come from plants or animals, this comes from an animal. Typically a cow produces milk. So that's important for kids to understand. They'll be able to tell you that hopefully in kindergarten. And some examples of that would be cheese and yogurt. So once we're done going through the PowerPoint, like I showed, we will be able to play a game with the kids to get them kind of interacted with the material before they have to be able to know it on their own. So I created this game where we have a beach ball, and so you can kind of throw the ball around, and there's different questions that come with each color of the ball. So wherever your thumb lands, your right thumb, is what question you answer. So the ball question. So if I landed on a white one, there's a list of questions that I created. So what is my plate? What are ways other than healthy/unhealthy to identify and categorize foods? What section is the biggest on my plate? What section is the smallest on my plate? So those are kind of general questions for white. And then I did it separately for if you land on the blue, you're supposed to name an example of a grain and or a protein and explain the difference between the two. If your right thumb lands on yellow, name an example of a vegetable and dairy and explain the difference between the two. And then red is name a fruit and explain what the big major difference is between fruits and vegetables. So this is an interactive way to get the kids kind of engaged, stand up, pass it around as a class, and obviously you can create more questions. But those are just the small ones that I came up with for a small class. But yeah, it gets them moving, it gets them excited, it gets them energized, and ready for the next activity. So after we do the ball game, we can come back, kind of talk about it, reiterate the importance of the different categories, and explain again why my plate is so valuable and why it is important to be able to understand the different parts of it and classify foods into all of those 5 groups versus unhealthy or healthy, like we kind of did at the beginning, because that was just the basis, and we're growing and we're learning, obviously. So the next activity that I was going to do is that I printed blank copies of my plate. So each kid will get a pass out copy of my plate. So we can pass it out. They can color it. They can make it lively, make it look like how their plate should really look. Color it in. Write the names of the different foods that fit into it that they like, that they'll eat, that their families will share and eat and talk about. And kind of split it up so they'll get a blank one, and then they need to be able to recognize which category goes where, like where the grain goes, where the dairy, the protein, so on, so they can demonstrate that they understand the importance of eating a balanced meal. So once they do that, they'll get the blank menu or plate to create their own menu for their families for the dinner. So let's say they wanted to create something that their whole family would like. So then they'll get their paper, they'll get it passed out, and I created an example already like this. But they will get a piece of paper, and they can go ahead and draw things for their family. So I'll go ahead and add on to mine as if I was a student and have the classmates go ahead and do it, and then we would stand up and present. So I already created mine ahead of time before the video so that I could go ahead and show it to you guys. But so on my plate, I have my fruit, grains, veggies, protein, and milk. Or dairy. So for my dairy, I chose to do chocolate milk. So I drew my chocolate milk in the corner, kind of like this. And then for fruit, I drew my 3 favorite fruits. So I drew an apple, a pineapple, a strawberry, and I put that